Thank you so much for this. I won't call it an award because
Simon Cowell's story is one of extraordinary transformation, from an invisible mailroom clerk to one of the most influential figures in modern entertainment. Long before his face became synonymous with primetime television, Simon was a restless young man navigating the quiet streets of Elstree, Hertfordshire. Born in 1959 into a family that looked elegant from the outside but hid emotional distance within, he grew up surrounded by expectations he could never quite meet. His father, Eric Cowell, was a successful music executive known for discipline and formality, while his mother, Julie Brett, was a graceful ballet dancer whose love seemed locked behind polished smiles. School brought little comfort. Simon struggled with authority and boredom. Teachers saw a boy too outspoken, too easily distracted, too rebellious to fit into the mold. When he left Dover College with only a few qualifications, he carried something heavier than academic disappointment, the belief that he was destined to be unseen. That feeling of invisibility became his greatest burden and, in time, his greatest motivator. From the mailroom to a dream. His father eventually helped him secure a humble position in the mailroom at EMI Music. There, Simon carried packages for producers who barely noticed him, fetched coffee for executives who never learned his name, and handled fan letters for stars who lived the life he could only imagine. Yet, in the anonymity of that mailroom, something changed. He began to observe, to listen, to study how fame operated, how talent was molded, marketed, and magnified. Beneath the humiliation of menial labor, Simon was quietly building the foundation of an empire. He once said, "I was invisible in a world obsessed with the spotlight." That invisibility became fuel. Determined to never feel small again, Simon decided to take a chance on himself. By the early 1980s, he launched his own record label, Fanfare Records, and for a moment it seemed as if his gamble would pay off. Hits like So Macho by Sunita made him a rising name in the industry, but fame is fickle. Within years, trends shifted, sales plummeted, and the empire he was building crumbled to dust. Failure and fire. When Fanfare collapsed, Simon was barely in his 30s and already bankrupt. He returned to his parents' home, his childhood room, his old ghosts, his lingering sense of failure. Those were the darkest years of his life. Friends disappeared, creditors called relentlessly, and Simon's confidence disintegrated. Yet, from those ashes, something indestructible began to form. He realized that pain could either define him or drive him, so he chose the latter. When BMG offered him another chance in the early 1990s, Simon accepted with humility. No longer chasing critical acclaim, he focused on what people actually wanted. He began signing artists the industry mocked, boy bands like Westlife, duos like Robson and Jerome, and novelty acts others ignored. Critics sneered, but their songs topped charts. Simon had tapped into the heartbeat of the masses, reinvention and revolution. By the late 1990s, Simon Cowell was no longer chasing the approval of executives. He was crafting something far greater, a direct connection with the public. That connection reached its peak in 2001 with Pop Idol, the show that would forever change television. His blunt honesty, dry humor, and unapologetic criticism made him a household name. When American Idol launched in 2002, Simon became the face of global entertainment. Millions tuned in not just for the singers, but for his judgment. His raised eyebrow could terrify contestants and thrill audiences. What many called cruelty viewers saw as truth. His words built careers, broke hearts, and defined a new era of television authenticity, scandal, and second chances. In 2013, Simon's carefully constructed image shattered when news broke of his relationship with Lauren Silverman, the wife of his close friend Andrew. The scandal dominated headlines and nearly destroyed him. For the first time, the man who built other stories could not control his own. He was labeled, ridiculed, and judged. And then, out of that chaos came redemption. In February 2014, Simon became a father. Holding his son, Eric, for the first time changed everything. The ruthless mogul who once thrived on confrontation now found peace in bedtime stories and laughter. My priorities changed completely, he said later. My world wasn't about ratings anymore. It was about him. Fatherhood grounded him. The scandal left scars, but it also softened his heart. He became more open, more reflective, and more aware of what truly mattered: the weight of loss. In 2015, just as Simon was finding balance, tragedy struck again. His mother, Julie, passed away at the age of 89. To the public, it was a natural loss. To Simon, it was unbearable. She had been the quiet anchor of his turbulent life. Losing her reopened every childhood wound. He withdrew from the spotlight, describing her death as the hardest thing I've ever gone through. Her passing forced him to confront the fragility of time. It deepened his empathy, reshaped his priorities, and reminded him that love, not ratings, is the true measure of legacy. Broken, but unbowed. Then came August 2020. While testing an electric bike at his Malibu home, Simon suffered a horrific accident that shattered his back in multiple places. 6 hours of surgery, steel rods in his spine, and months of painful recovery followed. For a man known for control, the ordeal was humbling beyond words. He feared he would never walk again, but his motivation was simple: his son. I thought of Eric, he said, and I knew I had to fight. Every step became a symbol of resilience. Even after a second accident in 2022, Simon refused to surrender. The falls had stripped him of vanity and illusion. What remained was gratitude, a man who now valued life itself above all else. The mirror moment. In the years that followed, Simon faced another battle, this one not of bones but of identity. Years of cosmetic procedures had altered his appearance to the point where he no longer recognized himself. Public scrutiny was merciless. Yet instead of retreating into denial, he admitted his mistake with rare humility. I went too far. I didn't recognize the person in the mirror. From that moment, he chose authenticity. He abandoned the chase for youth and embraced age with dignity. The man once obsessed with perfection finally accepted imperfection. Enough, he decided. Let it show. And the world respected him for it. The loss that shattered him. In September 2024, another heartbreak arrived. Liam Payne, once the teenage hopeful Simon had discovered and nurtured into global stardom with One Direction, died suddenly at 31. The news broke Simon's heart. He described the loss as like losing a son. The tragedy silenced him. No cameras, no interviews, just grief. He spent quiet evenings with Eric, replaying old audition tapes and remembering laughter that would never return. For all his power, Simon was helpless to change fate. And in that helplessness came a new understanding that life, fragile and fleeting, is the only true currency we possess. A softer legacy. Now, in 2025, Simon Cowell stands not as the feared judge of old, but as a gentler, wiser man. At 65, he continues to appear on Got Talent, but with a warmth that reflects decades of hard earned perspective. He speaks less of ratings and more of gratitude, less of fame and more of legacy. His days are carefully structured: therapy for his spine, healthy meals, long walks with Eric along Malibu's coast. The supercars and mansions remain, but they no longer define him. "I don't want Eric to inherit money," Simon has said. "I want him to inherit values." Much of his wealth is now destined for charity supporting children's health and creative education. The man behind the empire. The once ruthless mogul has become a philanthropist and mentor, channeling his influence toward the next generation. He no longer seeks to dominate the stage. He seeks to light it for others. The lines on his face tell the story of battles fought and lessons learned. Ambition without compassion is hollow. Success without meaning is failure. Conclusion. From judgment to grace. Simon Cowell's life is not a tale of perfection. It is a saga of reinvention, a story of a man who stumbled, broke, and rebuilt himself time and again. From the lonely boy craving approval to the father finding joy in his son's laughter. His journey reminds us that greatness is not about control or fame, but about transformation. He has learned that love outlasts power, that empathy outshines arrogance, and that scars, emotional or physical, are not signs of weakness, but proof of survival. Simon Cowell's greatest legacy is not the stars he discovered or the empires he built. It is the humanity he finally found within himself, and perhaps that is his final and most powerful message. You can lose everything: money, fame, control, and still rise again, not by chasing perfection, but by embracing the imperfect beauty of being human.